Hi, I'm DeVol. I wrote Getting Ahead back in 2003, and since then it's grown to be used in other sectors too. For example, investigations into economic class in America is for low-income entry-level students. Then there's the next book is for people coming out of prison, and the next for people that are in the workplace. And of course, when you're doing these things, you want to keep track of what your results are and see how things are going. And that's where Charity Tracker comes in. So it's a great pleasure to be able to talk about them today and the important role they've played in the work that we do, because we really do need to be able to talk about results. So what sectors are using this work? Here's a long list. Just about every sector is impacted by poverty, and therefore every sector can do something about it. And so they see that Getting Ahead works in these different settings, and so it's being used in many, many places, and we're really happy to see it grow that way. I think it's important to know that all the data that we're sharing with you is created essentially by Getting Ahead graduates. They are the ones that do the self-assessments and do the hard work, and then all of that data goes into Charity Tracker and comes back in these results about stability, resource development, and return on investment. So we have to honor them for the hard work that they do and their willingness to share the results. And this is what a group of investigators looks like. Now, these happen to be women, as you can see. It turns out, and you'll see in the data I share with you later, that 70% of the people going through Getting Ahead are women and 30% are men. And usually the groups are mixed, but I just thought these people look great, and I thought I'd just pick their picture out. So those are investigators, and these are facilitators at a training. So they are invested, and they're doing a lot of work on this. Lots and lots of time and energy goes into Getting Ahead. So the question is, what role might you play? So the first one is investigators, the graduates, Getting Ahead facilitators we've mentioned. But Getting Ahead has to have a coordinator. There has to be somebody putting it all together. And that's a huge role for people to pick up in the community. And then it all starts with Bridges training. So hopefully you have a Bridges trainer somewhere around to do this. And then you might be a board member, a collaborative member in the community effort, a funder, or an evaluator. And that's what we're talking about today, is evaluation. So these are the folks that are helping us. Mike, Simon, you see, and Joey. All of us that work with Charity Tracker, I'm talking not just about myself and the folks at HOP, but every site that uses their work raves about how easy they are to work with. Wonderful people. And their work keeps expanding too, and they're doing a whole lot of community work using their technology to make collaboratives share information and to be able to smooth out what the experience is like for people in poverty that are accessing the community agencies. They do great work. Here's Quinn Schipper. He's an early adapter of our work, and you can see he's an evaluator, and he's got a great sense of humor. So he told me that when, these are in the early days, when they were doing self-assessments on stability and resources and so on, that he would actually sit down with the investigators that wanted to, meet with them and talk through these 5-point scales on everything, which you're going to see. And it would take a long time. And it would make for great relationships. I mean, he really developed tight relationships with people during those conversations. But when you have a whole lot of people going through Getting Ahead, you don't have that kind of time. So today, I'll be sharing with you how fast it can be done, because we now can do this using computers and fillable forms, and then sending those directly to Charity Tracker. So things are going to be much easier from here on out. So just a little bit about Getting Ahead itself so that you know what it's about. We call it the kitchen table learning experience. And you can see these people all sitting on the table, and one of them is standing up and kind of talking about some of the work they've done over the time. And it's hard work. There's usually 12 people in the group. Very rarely do we go over that. So it's a kitchen table experience, 16 to 20 sessions done once or twice a week. Most sessions take 3 hours. And we pay investigators for their time, just because for people in poverty, having cash on hand is a difficult thing. So typically it's a gift card of $25. So they do the 3 assessments on stability, resources, and negotiating skills. And then we put those into the tracking systems that we're talking about with Charity Tracker. So more about the methodology. We hope for a lot of diversity at the table. The more, the better. And I'm talking about by gender, by age, by life experience. And the more diversity, of course, the more wisdom in the room, the more experiences, life experiences. So half of the learning takes place in those discussions. People create mental models for themselves and the community all the way through, and these stick in your memory. The information is all meaningful and relevant, and they are the ones that bring up the hard topics. We explore the discrepancy between what is and what could be. That's built into our theory of change. And they create a future story with SMART goals. So they also quickly become accountable for the success of the group, because we're not teaching, we're facilitating. And most importantly, our facilitators are agenda-free, and there's no teaching going on. So that makes it a very safe environment for people to learn. And then we recognize people in poverty as problem solvers. And I think we honor them right away for that from the very get-go in the first session. And we know that their ideas and information are needed at the community, and we want them to end up at our community planning tables. So nobody decides for you or tells you what to do, and nobody will do for what you can do for yourself. So this is a lot of taking responsibility for learning. So anyway, self-discovery is hard work, but in the end, it's really rewarding for people. Those conversations are very deep and powerful as people go along. So this is being used in 47 states and 6 other countries. And there are studies being done. Several of them are peer-reviewed, published articles. And the point I want to make with you is that should you want to get into this work, get a hold of us, these very same people would be happy to talk to your researcher to talk about the design of the study. So that's an open invitation. And so here's what some of the results are. You can see this is through June 30th of 2022. I should say that it's interesting, how this plays out in terms of race and ethnicity. The people in Getting Ahead, 29% have been African Americans, which is more than the percentage of African Americans in the nation, as you can see. Asian population about the same. Hispanic and Latino are behind what's in the nation. And you can see for the rest for yourself. For whites, it's 40%, and 60% of would be the percentage in the US. Now, to the stability issues. These are the things that we study, from everything from time horizon to your housing, to bills and emotional, moving all the way across to transportation and social connections. So people are doing these self-assessments, and you can see here, if you take a look at the very top, this study included 2,044 graduates, and the period of time between them entering the data and then retaking it and re-entering it was 269 days, which is more than 2/3 of a year. The longer, the better between the span, of course, because it takes time to build these. So, and then here are the resources that we studied. There's 11 of them. And so financial, emotional, mental, and so on. And it's interesting to see which things get changed the most easily. The resources kind of typically grow kind of in the same pattern, but I'm going to back up the slide to show you something interesting. The time horizon on stability, which means metacognition, thinking about your thinking so that you have to learn to get the long view, right? And so that you can do more abstract thinking. That's something that you can change as soon as you learn the theory of change. So that's 26%. Social connections on the other end grow pretty fast. Emotional resources can grow fast too, if you begin to use the skills that you're picking up. So the things that are slower, just take longer, like legal issues, right, and health and wages. Those things are just going to take longer. So some of it is just simple logic. And then we take a look at the return on investment: increased monthly income, decreased debt, decreased total debt, increased assets, and decreased use of federal benefits. And of course, people are very interested in those kind of results too, because these are the kind of things that you want to share with your communities. So on the right side here, you can see which things changed the most. The return on investment, for example, you can see the increased monthly income of 54%. That's amazing in three quarters of a year. That's just amazing. Building your resources, the ones that are easiest to do are hidden rules, language, relationships. So you can see them building faster than the ones at the bottom: physical, spiritual, and integrity. And then when it comes to stability, time horizon, I'm pointing that out once again. So we're able to kind of learn about these, and we begin to see the patterns, and we can kind of look for if something comes up that's a bit out of whack, we can find out what's going on. So here's where we get to how to collect the data. And I'm so proud of the way AHA Process responded to COVID, because we sat down with the people using Getting Ahead. They all wanted to continue meeting, even though they were not allowed to meet in person. And in no time, we had all the assistance they needed to run Getting Ahead virtually. And part of that was the fillable forms for these self-assessments that I'm talking about, which are very time consuming. And some of the forms actually take calculations like your debt to income ratio and that kind of thing. So it makes all the math much, much easier. And then those can just be, the data can be entered and sent directly to Charity Tracker. So very happy about that. So these are the kind of things that your facilitators would see when they're setting it up. And then when you start looking at the stability scale, for example, there's a couple of pages of these. They're on a 5-point scale. And so the time horizon, I can't see past today. For 5, the stability is I can plan and meet goals 5 to 50 years in the future. So all of these are defined, just to point that out. And then when we get to looking at the stability indicators, it's the same thing, all on a 5-point scale. So if you take a look at the bottom there, it says social connections on a 5-point scale. I spend a lot of time with people who are often in trouble at work, school, and with the law. And on the right side, under very stable, I spend time with people who are part of a positive community. Well, it takes a long time to move from a 1 to a 5, right? But it's very, very important. And you might notice that there were 2 recent studies or articles that came out of a study about the value of social capital or making friendships across class lines. And all of that, I should tell you, is baked into Bridges and Getting Ahead. So here's more of what they would be looking at. So you can pick up the demographics and the ROI information all much easier when you're using the things that you can find on our website. So when it comes to resources, I'm really happy to say that originally there were 8. And when we went to Ruby, the Getting Ahead investigators in the first group said, we got to integrity and motivation and language are 3 more, we think. And Ruby, took a look at that and said, okay, so those got added by the first people that went through Getting Ahead. So again, these are, on a 5-point scale, but then they get a much deeper look at them. And this is what it looks like when you're filling out the form. And this is what a Getting Ahead investigator would be facing. So if you take a look at the top for financial, it says, doesn't have enough income to purchase needed goods and services. Now that is 5 questions, detailed questions. So this is what gets filled out and put into Charity Tracker. So it's really, really getting people to think deeply about every one of these on a 5-point scale. And here's the one on social capital. So, to expand on the first one, some people in my home are dangerous to me and others. I have been a victim of others. So that's the kind of questions, the detailed digging in about these issues of social capital. So it's hard work, and what we find is that people are very willing to be honest. I mean, the idea is there's no one that's going to be looking at these, other than the data we look at, right? And so this does not go public, and they don't have to share their results with the group there if they don't want to. So there's, by the time they get to doing these, people are very willing to examine themselves and do their self-assessments in a really rigorous way. So it ends up as a bar chart. And here's what one looks like. And I have to tell you, the story behind this is the woman who did this, you can see that most of them are low, her mental is high, and over on the right side, her motivation was a 1. But she said that when she looked at this, she went to the restroom and wept for 20 minutes. And then she said that while she was in the restroom, her motivation changed. And she said that I can do something about this I'm smart. And I can raise my other resources. My parents were in poverty, and I got raised in generational poverty. And all the resources I started with were low. So this is what I can do for my kids. And that's when she made her argument for change. So somewhere during Getting Ahead, people start making that argument for change. We never tell them what they should do. So then we do the same thing. There's 2 storylines in Getting Ahead. One is the individual themselves, but then there's what's my community like? And the very first thing they do in Getting Ahead is do a mental model of their community. So the storyline always goes back and forth between me and my community. So then they do a community assessment too, and they go out and meet, and it's a 5-point scale, very rigorous. And they go out and meet the leaders of the community and get to know them and exchange business cards and so on. And then they end up with a big, huge, fat 3-ring binder. Actually, this couple in Dayton, I called them the golden couple. They came to a graduation and they were carrying this 3-ring binder, but there was a second one behind that contained all the information that they had collected on these sectors in the community: economy, housing, financial, wages, and so on. Now, this is from Danville, Kentucky, and I just am so, you can tell the rigor behind this because it's a 5-point scale, but the group was debating what ranking to give from the results they had collected. And so they had to break it down into 1 and 1.5 and 2 and 2.5. And it's interesting to me that under financial, there's a 0. So once they do this kind of thing, this information is information that gets shared with the community. And your collaborative would help do that so that they get to the planning and decision-making tables with everyone else. So these are the studies that have been done. I said earlier that let us know and we'll be happy to work with you to design studies. We're looking for the day when we become evidence-based, and we're well on our way towards that. So here's how to get a hold of me and how to get a hold of Charity Tracker. And if you have any questions, please get in touch with me. And I've talked to the folks about Charity Tracker saying I'm doing this and that they might be getting contacted. So there's their email address that they put out for you to write to. And they are the friendliest folks to work with. You can see that the data they're putting together for us is easy to use. And we really welcome you to the learning community that we have. Thank you very much.